peppers. Sweet peppers, hot peppers, chilies, they're among the easiest seeds to collect. But there are some very important factors that you need to know. Join me today as I share with you how I collect my pepper seeds. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and this is my pepper patch. I'm growing 7 different varieties, 33 plants along this row. I've been enjoying fresh fruit, I'm drying, I'm pickling, I'm fermenting, and I'm collecting the seeds of many of these plants. Now, right off the bat, the most important factor when saving any seed, but particularly peppers, is you only save the seeds of the fruit that is open pollinated. We often call this an heirloom variety. When you save the heirloom open pollinated seeds and then plant them the next year, you can expect to get the same plant that you're growing this year. If you get one of those hybrids of super hot or super sweet peppers, save those seeds and then plant them, there's no guarantee what kind of plant you're going to get. You can't sow hybrid seeds and expect it to be true to the parent. So I'm only growing one hybrid. Most of these are open pollinated, which means I can save these seeds. The question of cross-pollination always comes up, especially when you're growing 2 different types of cayenne and peperoncinis and Anaheims all together in a close space. But one of the nice things about growing peppers is that the flower is what we call a perfect flower. And what we mean by that is that the flower has both male and female parts within the same flower. It is most likely to pollinate itself before it gets pollinated by some insect flitting around. The rustle of a breeze is often enough to cause the flower to pollinate. The flapping of a bee's wings is enough to cause the flower to pollinate, and then the fruit will develop. Sure, cross-pollination can happen, but within peppers, it's not very likely. And in all of the years that I've been saving pepper seeds, I've never had an issue with cross-pollination creating a hybrid, and in the next year, I end up with a totally different plant. It could happen. If it is a happy accident, I say go with it, because you may discover a new fruit that year that you like. Another important consideration is that you need to harvest the fruit for the seeds when the fruit is fully ripe. Now, looking at these jalapenos right here, this is what we think of as a jalapeno, a nice, beautiful green fruit. Well, if you save the seeds of this fruit, very few, if any, will be viable because this is an immature fruit. All peppers will change beyond a green color when they're mature. It might be yellow or orange or red, but it's not green. So to save the seeds of a jalapeno, I need to look for a red fruit. And it's this red fruit, not the green one, that is the one that I'll target for collecting the seeds. And while a fully red pepper can identify it as being mature, I like to allow some of the peppers that I'm collecting for seeds to dry on the plant. You'll see that they start getting shriveled up and the skin becomes leathery. These are the best ones to save the seeds from. Allowing the fruit to dry on the plant does save us a little effort and time when it comes to collecting and storing the pepper seeds. If we pick a fully ripe fruit like this red Anaheim, it still has a lot of moisture in it. And so as I'll show you in a little bit, you have to cut it open, take out the seeds, and then give them time to dry. But if we let the fruit dry on the plant, we'll do the same thing, cut it open and collect the seeds, but we don't have to spend as much time waiting for the seed to dry before we put it into storage. Another good reason why you might want to let the peppers dry on the plant is that those dried peppers make an awesome storage container for your pepper seeds. I always do that, particularly with my cayenne peppers. I let them dry on the plant, I take them indoors, and I'll string up those dried peppers for using in the kitchen in the months ahead. Well, all of those dried seeds inside those dried peppers are still viable. You can take those seeds, start them, and create new plants to put in your garden. So while I can collect some of these cayenne peppers and go through the saving process, I just skip a couple of those steps and just wait until I use those peppers in the kitchen and then save the seeds for further planting. So let's collect some peppers for saving seeds. For these shishito peppers, I'm looking for the red ones and ideally some older red ones that have that leathery skin that I can save the seeds from. Sometimes you'll see a pepper that's red, but it still has green running through it. I prefer to wait until the pepper is completely red, a nice, deep, rich color, and those are the ones I'm going to collect. For the jalapenos, same thing. I don't want a green one, so I'll dig deep into the plant to try to find some peppers that are nice and red and ready to give me their seeds. I've harvested some peppers from 5 different varieties. I'm leaving the couple cayenne varieties on the plant to dry. And you notice this is a relatively small bowl. I have 2 of the peperoncinis and I have 2 of the Anaheims. I don't need a lot of peppers because there are enough seeds in each of these peppers to give me all the plants I need for the next couple years. Let's go inside and I'll show you the next phase of the process. We have the fruits of our peppers and now it's ready to harvest the seeds, which is pretty easy. And the tools to do this are quite simple. I like to use a small cutting board and a small knife to cut into the peppers as needed. I'll use a paper plate or paper towel to dry the seeds as needed. When I'm working with the really hot peppers, I strongly encourage the use of these disposable gloves like I use, because that burning oil, the capsaicin that gets in your skin, it can hurt for a couple days depending on the heat of the pepper. And especially if you rub your eyes or other tender body parts, those can hurt for a couple days too. So hot peppers means using gloves. And then some type of storage container. I like to use glass jars and I'll save jars in my kitchen, but I don't need jars this big when I'm just saving a few pepper seeds. So I've discovered these little jars and I'm using these almost exclusively now for my seed storage. I'll put a link below to these jars because I just think they're wonderful. And that's basically it. And if you allow the peppers to dry on the plant or after you get them in the kitchen, give them some time to dry, you don't even need all of these tools. And I'll show you that here in a little bit. Let's go ahead and start harvesting the seeds from these peperoncinis. These are fully ripe. You can see they're kind of leathery. I've allowed them to dry a little bit on the plant. And I'll show you as we cut into this pepper just how peppers are growing. The seeds will form at the top where it attaches to the main plant. And so you'll have a cluster of seeds at the top, and then you can expect that some of the seeds will extend down the side of the pepper plant. And this is actually where that capsaicin resides in the hotter plants, is right where these seeds are attaching. The seeds themselves aren't that hot. Mala just came in to join us. And so Start with the ones along the sides, and it's easy with a knife to just scrape aside these seeds. When they're fully ripe like this, they separate pretty quickly. You can just cut off the top of the pepper plant. That also makes it easy, and you can see how these seeds drop right off the plant. I use the knife, but for the peppers that don't have a lot of heat, like these pepperoncinis, you can use your nails and your fingers, but you can see that actually is a little more difficult. So I find that a knife works best. And that's all there is to it. We've pretty much cleaned up the seeds off of this pepperoncini. So I've counted how many seeds came from this one pepper, and I count 54 seeds. So you can see why you don't need a lot of peppers if you're going to collect seeds, because I'm not going to be growing 54 of these pepperoncini plants next year. You could just stop with one pepper and have viable seed. I'll just scoop it all onto the plate right now. I like to harvest the seeds from a second pepper just to ensure that I have some viable seed. It's possible that all of the seed from one pepper might be contaminated, or there might be some issues with it, but it's just the same. This is a smaller pepperoncini, and so as I collect the seeds off this one, I count 5. Wow, noticeable difference. There's only six seeds on this small one. So when it comes to getting the peppers off your plants, as you can see, you'll get more seeds with the bigger pepper compared to the smaller pepper. And now I'll just spread these seeds out on this plate and give them a couple days to dry. 3 to 5 days in a dry environment, especially the dry air of most houses, should be fine to dry the seeds. And then after that point, they'll be ready to dry. Or ready to store. You don't want to store the wet seed. You're opening yourself up to mold developing on the seeds and actually ruining the seed. So dry them completely before you put them in the jar. So I'll set that aside for a couple days. I've already labeled the jar, and then they'll be ready to store in that jar. For this Anaheim, I'll do it a little bit differently. I'll just go ahead, since I'm expecting most of the seeds to be at the top, to just go ahead and cut off the top. And if you don't need a lot of seeds, this is kind of a shortcut. Because we have all of these seeds ready to go, I can go ahead and scrape them off. And whenever I get to a quantity that's good for me, I can stop. I don't have to collect all of the seeds from every pepper. I'm only collecting seeds for my own use and to give away a few of the seeds. And so just this little bit, you can see there are dozens of seeds here. Now, the reason I do this is because if I cut into the pepper, you can see it's extra labor, and often there really aren't that many seeds in the pepper. So it depends on how many seeds you need and how fast you want this process to be, but there are dozens of Anaheim pepper seeds for me. I'll go ahead and spread these now onto this paper towel to dry. Give them a few days before I put them in the jar, and then I can put all of this into the compost pile. Now, I say that I'm putting this into the compost pile, but this is all perfectly edible. So if you're harvesting your peppers to use in the kitchen, go ahead and harvest the seeds and then use the peppers as you were planning. You don't have to put them in the compost pile. You can go ahead and harvest the seeds and then eat them without the seeds. Now, I did harvest last week some of these shishito peppers and allowed them to dry on my countertop. They've just been sitting there drying to show you how easy it is to harvest the seeds of dried peppers. I could just as easily have left these on the plant to dry, but it does hasten the process a little bit by bringing them into the kitchen and allowing a thin-skinned pepper like this to dry. And so to harvest these, we really don't even need much in the way of tools at all. With these peppers that are already dried, it's a simple matter of just tearing apart the pepper and the seeds fall out. Break the top of the pepper, squeeze it a little bit, and the seeds fall out. Really doesn't get much easier than that. A big advantage of allowing the peppers to dry before you collect the seeds is that you don't need to cut them open. You don't need a cutting board. You don't need to wait 3 to 5 days or more for them to dry. These seeds are already dry. And so I'll go ahead and put them in the jar. I look in and I see a few dozen shishito pepper seeds just from those couple peppers. And now these are ready to go into storage. And so I'll put these little jars into a cool, dark, dry location for storage until I start the seeds and grow new plants. It's very important to keep them dry. That's one reason why you allow them to dry beforehand. But if there's any doubt in your mind as to whether they're dry enough, go ahead and take one of these desiccant packages like you get in electronics boxes and put that in before you put the top on the jar, and then put it into storage. That's really the best way to do it. And so when it comes to the rest of these peppers, I'll follow this same process. With these jalapenos, it'll be exactly the same. I do have a couple of these super chilies. This is a hybrid. These measure in at about 50,000 Scoville units. And so just to give you an idea of how hot that is, a typical jalapeno is around 5,000, often a little bit more. So these super chili hybrid peppers are about 10 times hotter than the jalapenos. I'll definitely be using gloves when I collect these seeds. And you may be wondering why I'm doing the hybrid seeds, since I said earlier that you really don't want to save hybrids. Well, it's to experiment, and you can do this as well. If you come across a really hot pepper that you like, you can save the seeds. If it's a hybrid, I know I'm not going to get this same pepper next year, but the offspring, those new peppers, may be something exciting. They may be really hot. They may be a new color. There may be something about them that the genetics of these hybrids will develop in that next generation. So it can be a fun experiment to do the seeds of something like a super chili to grow next year and then just see what happens. But I know that these shishitos and jalapenos and Anaheims and pepperoncinis, which are open pollinated heirloom varieties, will be perfectly normal and what I expect for next year. And I've got a lot of seeds to give away and a lot of seeds to grow myself. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.